So I'd just like to introduce Anke, who is my German friend and a wonderful polymer clay artist who tends to make, lean towards jewelry, don't you, Anke?
Yeah, definitely.
So you can introduce yourself better than I can introduce you.
Well, yeah, I've been working with polymer clay, I would say, for 20 plus years now. And my main focus is on jewelry, although I'm trying to get a little bit off that now, but we'll see how that goes. And yeah, it's always difficult to leave a field that you've been in for such a long time.
Absolutely. I have the same problem myself, because I'm known in the past as a food miniaturist.
Yeah.
And I've gradually moved towards flowers, but also I've changed towards being almost a business mentor.
Yeah.
So without actually, I'm not a mentor in the sense of I charge people at the moment, certainly for that work, but it's a change. And so I have, for example, I've got my Patreon, which I have people in from all those parts, and I'm sort of juggling. And in fact, I'm going to speak next week to Kate from Snowball Communications about how I make that transition, or how I pull my various business heads together. So what would you be leaning towards if you moved away from jewelry?
Well, I want to go a little bit more into sculpture, and also do some more meaningful things for me personally. And I think that's jewelry is one thing. It's basically like what looks good on your body, but also what looks good for the people buying the jewelry in the end. But I want to be a bit more of a storyteller.
Yeah.
And I feel like sculpturing is more going into that way. And in the last couple of years, I've been doing like small vessels and stuff like that, and trying to have a story around the vessel going on. And I really enjoy that. So I think maybe it's a better mean to tell stories, what I want to do. So
yeah. I did notice that your work has become more sculptural.
Yeah.
So there, I mean, the beautiful things that I put on the intro thing for your talk, these discs with the internal bits, and they've got the feeling of it like an iris, but it's almost like you're looking inside the earth or something. They're wonderful. I was really transfixed by those. Anyway, what our talk is supposed to be about is not our own work as such, but how we take that work into the classroom in a digital sense. And I guess that you've looked at that mostly because of the pandemic and not being able to go out to classes.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. But also I find it really good for me to practice on it and figure out how that works, because I'm in Germany and most of the people taking my classes are in the US.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do like to travel and like to go there and be in person if I can, but right now that's just not an option. But I think even if I can travel again, or we all can travel again, maybe it's a good way to have a couple of things online and some in person, whatever just, fits your timetable, what you have to do on the site. And so I think it's always good to know how to do stuff online. And another reason why I think it's a good idea to focus on is that all the online things are leaning towards filming more and more, because people just watch more moving pictures. And if you have great photographs, that's always a good thing. But if you have a great photograph that moves, that's even better.
Yeah. Well, yes, I mean, incomes for artists are leaning, and this is a very good month to have this interview, it's not an interview, it's a chat, but have this chat with you, because this is what I'm challenging myself this month, to produce more digital content as a passive income. And where your classes, you have to attend all your classes,
Yeah.
there is a possibility to do, to make and leave classes in a digital format without your presence.
Yeah.
And therefore to have a sort of stacked up passive income
Yeah.
from teaching, that there was no, it seems that this year has given us options that we never had before, or certainly made us think about these options.
Yeah. Well, another good thing about these online classes is you can do them live, obviously, and then you have a number of people that live in a time zone that works for you and them. And then you have all these people that can't join because they live in a different time zone, but you just record it and then you can play it again. So you do the class once, but then you have like a preserve of it that you can give out afterwards.
Right. So you're doing something like a hybrid between a recorded class and being available personally to answer questions.
Well, actually, I'm like always doing something new because I see the things that work and the things that don't work, and then I always change up things. So the last big class I did was, it was like a crazy class over 8 hours with recording. And after the class, I cut all the recordings and everything to make it a tiny bit smaller because it's just a huge amount of data you have. Yeah. And you need to handle that. And if you give it out to someone else, you have like an enormous package that you give to them data-wise. But the good thing was, I was kind of pushing through the 8 hours to finish the project because, I mean, that's what people like, to finish something when they go to a class. Yeah. And I can keep up with that pace, but not all of my students could. But they had the recording afterwards. So they were just coming along with me as long as they could. And some decided right from the start, they're just watching it. And they work with the recording on their own timeline, which is totally fine with me. Yeah. I just like to have someone, because I do it my way, but it might not be anyone else's way, and they can ask me questions. That's the good thing about live classes, because they can ask you what they didn't understand or what I didn't explain the way it was obvious for everyone else. So it's really good to have that feedback when you're doing it.
Can I ask you to clarify what you did? You had some pre-recorded material.
No. In this case, no. I did the class live. Right. And they could ask me questions. And in this case, I had my son as my assistant, and he helped me. He was like doing all the breaks we had in between, because over such a long time, you have to have breaks. It's no way around it. So he did all this, and there was a chat on the side running. We did it over Zoom. So there was a chat on the side. And I mean, I can't demonstrate and record myself and answer in the chat at the same time. I'm just one person, so I can't do like 5 roles. So he did all that for me, and he gave me feedback after the class, but the people asked in between, and then they stopped me because we turned off all their cameras and all their sounds to minimize the possibility of a breakdown of the technique, because you never know, it can happen. And it does happen sometimes. So we tried to make that smaller. But while we were doing all that, we did a recording. And that recording, I went over it with my software afterwards and made small packages and distributed it to all the people that were in class. And then I had people in Australia, and the timeline was just impossible for them to join. It would have been starting like at 3 o'clock at night time and go on for 8 hours. I mean, that's just impossible. So this person just had the recording to work with. So, but you basically have both, because you're doing it live, get the questions while you're doing it live, and record it while you're doing it, and afterwards you have the recording.
Right. So is that what you're doing for the next class, or have you changed your method of working for the next class?
Well, actually, that's another thing. It really depends on who you're working with. If you're just working for yourself, or if you have people kind of hiring you.
Yeah.
There's always these clay conventions or gatherings, and everyone has their own idea how they want to have it. So I just go along with whatever they want to have. And the next thing I'm doing is for Craftcast, and that's an online platform. And there we work a little bit different. So what I'm doing there is I'm thinking about what I want to do, and then I record myself doing it. And then I send the recordings to the people at Craftcast, and they go over it, cut it, and what they do, they cut off the sound, but I always talk when I'm doing it because we need that for the timing.
Yeah.
Because if you're not talking, you just race through it.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that that's a problem. In the past, Frank wanted me to video my work without me speaking. And then I had to sync up my voice afterwards. And I found that incredibly uncomfortable because it doesn't feel natural to me not to explain what I'm doing. And B, it just came out sort of weird. And Frank couldn't understand exactly where to put the pieces if I made a mistake and did it again. So I always do everything live, and I accept the fact that I'm not a polished professional. And in fact, I never have been. Even in my live classes, I've never been one of those who had everything perfectly organized, perfectly laid out, these perfect little packages, and we finished exactly on time, and everybody made this exact item. So I accept the fact that I work differently. And as you say, every teacher is completely different. Yeah. But what I thought you said you were doing was that you were playing bits of a recorded class.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. To continue what I'm doing. So I'm recording this, sending it off to the people, and then they have a live class. And in this live class, I'm discussing what I'm doing with the host, Alison.
Right.
And she plays the recording that I sent her before. So it's like, it's a chat over the recording. And then she says, I'm not sure, I don't think she's watching them before. She actually sees them the first time while we're doing this live class. And then she asks me questions, says, how did you do that? Or why are you doing it like that? And, you know, so she is the voice of the student, basically.
Ah, right. And then that whole thing is played to the students.
Yeah, and that whole thing is recorded. And if you miss the live date, or if you can't make it, you still can go into your library and see the recording.
Right. So what's happening is you've got two people, which I've seen something like this before, and I think it's very exciting. You've got two people, and one is teaching the other while they are transmitting it to the class group, which is the third the third part of the and I like the way that looks. So that's what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
So you've got a blog that you've been talking about this, haven't you?
Yeah, well, that blog is actually not my own blog. It's the Scalpy blog, and I'm a member of the design team. And how that works is every member of the design team has their month, and my month was May. Right. So I wrote 2 blog posts for them and had an Instagram takeover. And I tested something new I want to tell you about as well when I did that. So, and it happened to be the theme, how to prepare for an online class, which is what we're talking about now. So
yeah, that was lucky because we'd already been chatting about that's what I needed you to talk about. So yeah, lucky. Yeah, cool. So, so if people go to Sculpey's website, they can find your blog, can they?
Yeah, they have a website where they have their shop, but also projects that you can look up for, and the design team and other people make projects, so you can check out those. And then they also have a blog, and on this blog is like, you know, rotating people writing something on it.
Right.
And then you can look what that month is happening. And I mean, it's people that do all kinds of things with polymer clay. So it's not just jewelry, it's sculpting. And I don't know if there's a lot of miniature, but you know, it's just a variety of things.
So it's all related anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, our techniques are all related. But don't forget that your creative business isn't all about miniaturists. There just happen to be quite a few miniaturists here because of what I do and because I sort of started this group. But it's not all about miniaturists. It's all about all crafts. So you know, we're not talking only to miniaturists here. Now, so if somebody wanted to teach, because there are a lot of crafts people who are very, very nervous of seen on camera, and I have to say that I was one of them. And I got over it actually by being ill. I just thought it doesn't matter what I look like, I'm here, you know. But it took me to pass my 60th year and to realize that it didn't matter what I looked like, to be seen on video. So everything that I did pre my 60s was all only hands. You almost never saw my face. But I think it's important that people see your face because they need to see. I think there's a power in personality, isn't there? And so what's your advice to people who are thinking of teaching their craft, but who have never done it and who are nervous of doing it and don't know if they've got the right equipment?
Well, I mean, of course, you will want to check into all the material and devices and everything you have and start with that. I would not say buy any device or anything before you know what you have and how to use that. And most of us, I mean, we all have phones with cameras and you can record stuff on there. And if that's the only thing you have, start with that. And build up your experience. And every time you do something, you notice something, well, maybe that's not working so well for me. And I could check out, is there something that can help me? Either a device or a blog post by someone who's been through all that or something like that. And then try to slowly build up your experience. Don't try to do everything at once because this is just a ticket for chaos.
I think you're right. I mean, I think what puts people off is thinking that they have to go from 0 to 100 in 10 seconds.
No, don't do that. That is just overwhelming. And, you know, I mean, I've been doing that for a long time. And actually, both of my kids are kind of in that kind of industry. So I have a lot of helpers if I don't know what to do. And I used to do... I also had like a year-long training on digital things when I was a little bit younger and at home with my kids. So I have a background in that. And I try to keep up on date, which is really difficult because there's so many new things coming up. But I have a background and I'm not starting at 0. I'm starting somewhere else. I don't know.
I don't think you have to have a background in anything. If you want to do something, personally, because things change so often, I think you can start from 0 as long as you don't expect to go straight to 100. And you take the steps one at a time. And if you don't know something, there are always videos to help you with that aspect. And if you're prepared to, well, you just have to have patience, I think.
And I think you have to be a little bit open for ideas. And what I tend to do is, it sounds really stupid, but I've come to the conclusion that it really works best. If I have a question, I just put it into a search engine and see what comes up. And most of the times there is something really helpful coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I need to learn Instagram, and I've got the lovely Lisa is helping me with Instagram as well. She's been an absolute treasure this last month.
And also,
but also I'm going to have to look for an idiot's guide on really using Instagram for its best, because that's an area I don't know about. There are so many areas that we just have to take the time to pick them, don't we?
Yeah, and I think just take as much as you actually can digest. Just take small bites. And if you think, okay, I know how that works, then find something that is going well with that, or the next issue, or something like that. And if you think the phone isn't working like you do, maybe you need a small tripod for it. So don't hold it in the hand. Or
there's this thing that I've got, which has got the ring, and there's a little slot-in holder that sits within the ring. I haven't got it on today. Or there's a few companies that do things like, let me just pick this one up. It's well stuck to the surface, which is good. The ones that you put in the car.
Yeah,
really good. This one's a bit short. I've got another. I just swivel that round. I've got another really big one here that you can do overheads, which has got it's got a flexible neck, but it's really stiff.
I have one that's really good.
Oh yes, I like that.
It's called Gorilla tripod. But there's different companies, and you can actually bend those in every way you want.
Yeah.
So even if you would work outside, you can bend it around a tree twig or something.
Wow.
Or put it on front of your bicycle or something. So, or, you can hang it down like that. And if you have a phone.
Oh, that one really is good.
Yeah, I mean, and they are not that expensive.
No.
And if you start small and see if you find a small device that helps you in any way. For example, I really like to work in daylight because I think that's the most flattering. And I mean, I go on camera, whatever I look, basically. But if I have a good light, I prefer that.
Yeah.
But if I'm working for the US, most of the time, my natural light goes away because it's nighttime. So
I need time of day. That's
I need
right.
artificial lighting. And I was like trying to figure out something, and I was asking Christy Friesen, because she's doing like live videos all the time.
Yeah.
And I was asking her what she's using, and she had a really good tip, because it's like 2 small lights that you can actually stand right next to you.
Right.
And you can turn them on, and I think they were like 40 euros or something. Yeah. I mean, that's not that expensive.
Well, that's the thing. Light is important. Light. But I have had a problem with some of these ring lights and things.
Yeah.
That they do a digital pulse. They do a sort of weird pulse, which can make you shimmer a bit, which is weird.
Yeah.
But what I tend to do is I have as many different light sources as possible. So at the moment I'm sitting in front of my window with all I've got is Andalusian light, but there is some light from above. But wherever there is light, there's shadow. So what you need to do is fill as much of the light space with reflected light, which is easy.
Yeah, that's true. But there's a little warning to that. I mean, I like to light up as much as I can. And of course, people need to see either you or what you're working on.
Yeah.
But if you have too many lights and they have a different light temperature, sometimes you get really crazy effects, and you don't want that.
Yes.
And that never happens with natural light. That's why I really like to work with natural light. Even when I take my pictures, my still pictures, I most of the times just work with natural light, because I think that gives the nicest appearance.
I agree with you. I mean, I'm very lucky. When we live in a house that we're self-building, as you know, which is unfinished, as you know. But the one thing that we've got, which you've seen, is our wonderful light well, which is just at the center of the house. It's like the outside, isn't it?
Yeah.
And all the walls are painted white, so all the light that comes through the rooftop bounces all over the white walls. So that's when I'm not in there at the moment, but when I'm taking photographs, that is the lucky. I'm very, very lucky to have that facility, that I just have the most possible natural light.
I'm just getting something. I have to go around my table and drag it in the camera. I'm showing you something I built for my photography.
Oh yes, please do.
Okay, here we go.
Oh yeah.
That's my most used equipment for taking pictures. What it is it's actually an IKEA frame.
Yes.
Very inexpensive one. And if I take the back off, I bought myself a photography screen, and it's a diffuser screen. So now I have like this huge diffuser.
Right.
You can see it.
Oh wow, yes.
The light comes through.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I just place that in front of my window from my studio.
Yeah.
And here, back here, I place it's like a glass piece with black glass where I put my jewelry on.
Right.
And then I take the pictures from this side. So the light comes in from here, the camera is from this side, and I have my glass here and the jewelry on top. And that's my most used setup for taking pictures.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I mean, what you're doing with that is making the very best of your German light.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It sounds brilliant. Now,
and this foil is not that expensive. And if you just glue it in a frame, you can use it as a diffuser. And I think, I don't know, I bought it like 1 by 2 meter. So I can actually make a couple of them.
Yeah.
And if you do things like that, you can save yourself a lot of money. And if
if you're making small things, you can make a little box.
Yeah.
And light can come in from any side. You don't even have to have a light within the box. If it allows light through, it can come in from any source.
Yeah.
Can't it? Right, I wanted to ask you something. Right. Let's go back to the idea of preparing a class, because you do say very well in your blog about how to decide what to teach, because some people have never taught anything, and certainly never taught anything on camera. How do you decide what's going to be the best thing to make up a class?
Well, there's a couple of topics that you need to think about. One thing, obviously, is what people interest. Because if you're teaching something and no one is interested in it, it's not worth your time.
Yeah.
So, of course, it has to be something people are interested in it. But, I mean, that is a pretty wide field. It has to interest you as well, because if it doesn't interest you, you're not a good teacher.
Yeah.
And I think those are really basic things. But on some teachings I see on YouTube, I mean, not everything on YouTube is bad, but there's a lot of bad stuff out there. I think people are just not thinking about these basic requirements for a class.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's something that you really want to keep in mind. Is it interesting for me? Is it interesting for the people I want to put it to? So that's the most basic thing you need to have. Another technical equipment. Yeah. I'll try to come back.
I started calling these snafus.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is that even if you've got lots of experience, it doesn't matter what you're using. This morning, I'll just explain what happened this morning. Anke and I were looking at using rooms.
Okay, that's now the other camera.
Rooms wasn't working. Anke doesn't like this camera, so we decided not to do that. We were thinking about doing live, but that was causing problems as well. And so eventually we hit on doing it as a recording, which means that we will be late for the actual time that we were going to put this out. So that does mean that we're going to have to cut this a little shorter than I would, so that I can get down to telling people that it's going to be late. So I'm sure I wrote down another question. I said, I'm interested in how you interact on class day, but I think I already asked you that, because I thought that that you were playing bits of video, and which you are doing with the thing you're doing with Alison, aren't you?
Yeah.
So how do you decide when you're going to stop the film and let people in, sort of thing, let people ask questions?
Well, I try to let them in as much as I can, because I feel it's much better to have the question right when the question arises. Mm-hmm. And I just stop what I'm doing and try to answer the question. But that's something that you need a little bit experience with. You can't do that when you're starting out, because that is just too much.
Well, that's what I found, and it might be something to do with my age as well, but I had a real problem using Zoom before, because I was trying to do Zoom to Facebook Live with also a second camera on my, and so I was trying to juggle more things than my little old brain could possibly handle, and I don't think even a younger person would find that really that easy. And then things would happen, like the Wi-Fi would break down because I wasn't plugged in. In fact, I'm not Wi-Fi'd. I'm wired at the moment. So I found that even put me off doing live at all.
Well, I think you're putting yourself a little bit down, because it's not just you, it's everyone.
Exactly. Well, this is what I said to Anke this morning when we were juggling these ideas and trying to find out what would work best for us this morning. I said, Anke, you've made me feel an awful lot better, because you've got more experience of the video classes than I have, and you have problems this morning, and that makes me feel like I'm normal. So thank you very much for that, Anke, this morning.
I think the difference between someone starting out with it or feeling a little bit insecure because of all the tech stuff and everything, and someone whose experience is, I always have a second way in my head. So if one thing isn't working, I'm doing something else. And I know I have at least 2 or sometimes even 3 possibilities to do something. So if something breaks down, I'm not freaking out. I'm just going ahead and trying to pretend nothing happened.
So and be relaxed, even if you're paddling like crazy underneath.
I give you a little story about that. I wrote a couple of books about polymer clay in Germany, and one of the books had a CD included with all the tutorials filmed.
Right, yeah.
And the publisher gave me another book and said, have a look at that and have a look at the CD so you know what we want to have. And then they invited me to the studio to film it. And I was like, okay, I looked at everything, and there were 2 people in the video. One was doing the demoing and the other one was kind of asking what they were doing and everything. So I was prepared for that. And then I came into the studio, set everything up and blah, blah, blah. And the people were there. And then they were like, okay, go ahead, start now. And I was like, wait a minute, where's the second person? And I said, which second person?
Oh dear.
And I had no idea. And I mean, I didn't even ask, because I was thinking that was the setup, but it wasn't.
So always be ready for for something to go wrong, and what are you going to fill that?
Yeah, and it's not you or anyone else. People always have these issues, and even like in professional movies, there's always things going wrong. Be prepared that things can and will go wrong.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the only reason that some people look so much better at it than I do, or than we do, or whatever, is that they have done it more often. So if you're not doing it perfectly now, it doesn't matter. Inject your personality, inject your abilities, inject the inspiration that you have, and don't worry too much about the polished bit, because it's not even the most important part of teaching, is it?
No, I mean, I think when you're teaching and you're so overwhelmed with all the technical stuff on the side, that takes away from your creativity and your personality and what you actually want to teach. The tech side is there to help us, not to hinder us. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind, because people want to see me, not what kind of computer or camera or microphone I have. They don't, that's not something they are interested in. They want to see me and what I'm doing. And I have to make sure they can see me and what I'm doing. That's my job.
Yeah. So, and on top of that, it's not about us, it's about them and their experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I haven't slept well and I come in with, rings under my eyes, that doesn't interest them. They want to see what I'm doing with the clay.
Yeah, and what they can do with it. Because at the end of the day, if your class member goes home with an idea, some inspiration, or a beautiful piece, and it doesn't have to be all of those, it can be one, two of those, then they've had a good day. It's our job to entertain them, not their job to make us feel good, I think.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the longer you do it, the more stupid stories you have, what happened to you. And I remember one time I recorded myself doing something. I think it must have been live. I'm not quite sure what it was, but I do remember the moment I was doing something and I realized I showed it the wrong way.
Oh,
because
I do that all the time.
Yeah, and it's awful. And the only thing I hear myself saying was like, oh dear. and then I switched something up, but no one noticed that I did the wrong thing or the wrong way, because I had a backup piece there, and I just went like this with my hands, and then the wrong piece disappeared and the right piece came into the picture. And after that, I just had to laugh about myself, but I didn't even think about it. I mean, it was like, instinct.
The times I have to say, ignore everything I've just said.
Yeah.
That happens so often. Anyway, Anke, because of the time, and I'm going to have to tell people that this is going to be late. We're going to draw this to an end, but let's talk another time in a few months and see how our teaching has evolved over the next few months. It's been fascinating to talk to you. And underneath, when we do post this, underneath we'll put where your blog is, shall we?
Yeah, where the Sculpey blog is.
The Sculpey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that.
Are you there if anybody wants to ask you questions? When you don't have to be there on the spot.
I mean, they can post it right under the video, and I'm just going to check in there, or they can message me. I mean, I'm on Facebook as well, and I answer them as quick as I can.
Okay, thank you very much, Anke. Your name will be
welcome
anyway, so thanks ever so much. Have a great day.
You too. See you.
See you. Take care. Bye.